Hello, today we will recap a romantic thriller movie, in which a teenage girl hugs her handsome teacher and tortures him. Before we start, please subscribe to our channel for more such amazing recaps. Spoilers ahead, chill out, and enjoy. The movie starts with a janitor cleaning the floors and preparing to leave for the day. He goes to investigate a noise in the locker room. He comes across a terrified young lady sitting on the floor. He rushes to help her, but another girl approaches him and tells him to run. Following that, we see Kyla photographing everyone at school for the upcoming school yearbook. Chris, their new English teacher, catches her eye and draws her attention to him. Trisha, a popular student, notices Chris and believes she can seduce him in 2 days, so she hugs him on a daily basis. During the lecture, all girls are feeling hugging their new English teacher. In their first class, Chris quickly becomes every girl's new crush. Trisha doesn't waste any time after class and starts flirting with Chris. Kyla visits the computer lab and meets Riley. There, she introduces herself to Riley. They shake hands before Riley reveals that Chris is her father. After that they become friends. Kyla asks Riley if she can come over to her house for a study session, seeing it as an opportunity to be closer to Chris. Following that, we see Kyla becoming more interested in Chris and photographing him more frequently. When she gets home, she finds her mother getting ready for a date with a man. She also notices that her mother has also purchased a new dress for the date. At night, Kyla dreams of Chris and touches her sweet spot while imagining Chris hugging her. She goes to Riley's house the next day and immediately starts asking Riley questions about her father. Riley responds by revealing that her mother had been cheating on Chris, which resulted in a divorce, and they moved to a new place. Kyla then tells Riley about her father, who abandoned her and her mother when she was 6 years old. In the meantime, when Riley goes to the bathroom, Kyla walks into Chris's room and visualizes herself with him. Trisha is still trying to use her charm on Chris the next day at school, and she wants to hug him. She flirts with him, but Chris, being an old school man, misses her cues. Trisha approaches Riley after class and befriends her. Kyla notices them together and becomes jealous. Riley is warned by her that Trisha is dangerous and obsessed with Chris. According to Kyla, Trisha has a history of misbehaving with teachers, as she slept with a history teacher the previous year, causing him to be replaced by another teacher for an entire year. Later that day, Kyla calls Riley and learns that Riley is about to turn 18. As a result, Kyla suggests that she host a birthday party at her home, and she will help her gather as many guests as possible. She then changes the subject and asks about Chris' dating history. She learns that Chris is dating someone. Then someone knocks on the door, which Kyla opens. Chris comes to her house to see her mother. Kyla was shocked to learn that her mother had started dating Chris after meeting him at the grocery store, prompting her to disrupt their date by spilling water on Chris, causing them to cancel their plans to have dinner at their house. Chris is forced to spend the night with them because his clothes get dirty. During dinner, Kyla can't take her gaze away from Chris. But she can't stand watching her mother and Chris flirt. She goes back to her room. She assumes her mother and Chris hugging each other. They begin kissing each other when Kyla appears and stops them from hugging. Kyla lies about someone watching her change in her room and pretends to be afraid, and ruin their hugging session. She wishes to be with her mother and Chris so that they do not hug. There, she learns from Chris that Riley is still hanging out with Trisha, despite her warning. Next morning, Chris offers to drive Kyla to school because he is also going there after picking up Riley. While they wait for Riley, Kyla flirts with Chris and tells him that she is now an adult and can do whatever she wants with her life. Riley joins them in their conversation, and they depart for school. Despite Riley's warning that she is being used by Trisha to approach her father, Kyla confronts Riley about her friendship with Trisha at school. Riley, on the other hand, tells her that Trisha says Kyla, not her, had an affair with her history teacher. Kyla denies the accusation and treats Riley rudely, forcing her to leave. Later, Kyla confronts Trisha and threatens her to stay away from Riley, but Trisha is unconcerned and refuses to budge. After that, she photographs herself in private poses that evening, so she can use these seductive pics for her dangerous plans. The next day, Kyla opens her locker to find it filled with photos she took the night before. She goes straight to Chris, who assures her that the perpetrator will be found. Riley is aware of them but ignores them. Riley and Kyla then make amends and apologize to one another. Kyla also admits to having slept with the history teacher, claiming that she was tricked. At night, Kyla's mother is now getting ready for a date with Chris. Kyla examines Chris's phone while he is in the bathroom and discovers private suggestive messages from Trisha. But in reality, Kyla sabotaged Chris and Jess's relationship by sending suggestive texts to Chris while posing as Trisha. After reading the texts, Kyla's mother accuses Chris of taking advantage of his students. Chris is then dumped by her mother, who asks him to go. Kyla, on the other hand, is clearly enjoying the situation in her room, because her mother is no longer in her way, and she can now easily hug Chris. Kyla went out to meet him in his truck. She knocks the door and starts kissing Chris, while claiming he deserved to be a man and have what he wanted without feeling sorry. Chris can no longer control his hormones, and hugs her in the truck. The next day, Chris is completely lost in class, and Trisha is still trying to flirt with Chris, but Kyla interrupts her. Meanwhile, the police arrive at the school and arrest Trisha, after discovering the phone used to text Chris and Kyla photos in her locker. Kyla attends the party later that night. She enters Chris's bedroom and begins seducing him. Chris continues to resist Kyla's advances, but eventually falls victim. They start making love, and Riley walks in and notices them together as they are about to hug. She is disgusted by the scene and leaves. Chris tries to stop her, but it's too late, there's no going back. Chris decides to go after her but is stopped by Kyla, who informs him that Riley is an alcoholic. He dismisses her and sets out in search of Riley. The following morning, Riley tells Kyla's mother everything that happened the night before. Chris tries to make amends with her at school, but she isn't in the mood. After class, Kyla's mother confronts and slaps Chris. She walks away with Kyla. Kyla informs her mother that she is of legal age and can love whomever she wishes. Kyla accuses her mother of jealousy and advises her to stay out of her way. She even declares her love for Chris. Riley confronts Chris and demands to know why he hugs her school friend. Chris apologizes to Riley and tells her that he will no longer see Kyla. Riley finally accepts his apology. The next day, Kyla calls Trisha and asks to meet her before school. When Kyla arrives, she admits to framing Trisha and begins hitting herself. She even breaks her fingers to frame Trisha again. As Riley and Chris arrive, Kyla cries for help, claiming Trisha assaulted her. The police then arrest Trisha, and Kyla is taken to the hospital. Riley and Chris go to the hospital, and Riley tells Kyla that her relationship with her father is over. Kyla appears to agree, and she then asks Riley to cover her yearbook duties for a volleyball game that night, due to an injury to her hand, which Riley accepts. Kyla also asks Riley if she can say her final goodbyes to her father. Kyla tells Chris that they can finally be together now that Trisha has left, but Chris denies her, telling her that their relationship is over and that she should leave him alone. But Kyla is madly in love with Chris and wishes to strengthen her bond with him. Kyla declares her love for him and reminds him that he will be seeing her in class every day. Chris decides to quit his job to get away from her, and leaves to gather his belongings from the classroom. Kyla walks out of the hospital with a scalpel and heads to school. Riley is confronted by Kyla, who stabs her in the stomach and tells her that only one of them can be in Chris's life. She then goes to Chris's class, holding the scalpel to his throat and telling him they were meant to be together. She then held Chris hostage in his classroom with the scalpel while sexually tormenting him, implying that she had murdered her previous lover for not satisfying her hormones, and claiming that he would do whatever she said in their relationship. Riley is still alive and attempting to look for help. Chris manages to push Kyla off of him, but Kyla attacks and knocks Chris unconscious. A janitor overhears the commotion and approaches Kyla, who pretends to be injured and requests his help. Janitor sees Riley in the hallway, and she warns the janitor to run for help. But Kyla appears from behind and slits the man's throat with the scalpel. Kyla then attacks Riley in the hallway, but she somehow escapes. Then she chased her to the school darkroom, cornering her and viciously declaring that only one of them would survive. As a result, the two get into a fight with Riley eventually defeating Kyla. Riley and Kyla are both taken away by the police in different ambulances, and Kyla is probably taken into custody for her various offenses. After a few months, Chris and Riley have relocated, and Chris is eager to begin a new teaching position, while Riley is looking forward to her first day of college. But as Riley was leaving for college, the movie ended with a hooded figure appearing outside their home. Kyla appeared to have escaped from custody and maintained her heel persona, and pursuing her obsession. So this was the story of the film My Teacher, My Obsession, released in 2018. If you like the story, then do watch the full film, and if you want to watch more such amazing recaps, then do subscribe to our channel. See you in the next recap.